Welcome to my ramblings. Okay, episode 3. I haven't decided what title to give it yet, but we're continuing on. We had the second power manager since I had been there. He told me he was when he came in that he's on the last leg of his career, and this is the last thing he was going to do before he retired. And so 8 months later, he was out, and we would get a new power manager. It'd be my fellow electrical engineer. Um, but during this time, there was a couple of issues that came up. Equipment issues that needed to be addressed, and he was working on something that apparently there was something wrong with one of our protective relays, and these guys are sitting there discussing, well, we're going to have to shut the whole damn thing down, and we just can't do that. And so the other electrical engineer walked out, and I really shocked the hell out of this guy. He almost went into panic mode because I threw a switch, pulled out the relay, said, "Look, that's all we got to do. Put it back in." Well, that's the way they're designed. You have to be able to take the electrical relays out, the protective relays out, in order to, calibrate them and stuff from time to time. Sometimes, if they do go bad, you have to replace them. So, um, he was working on something. He was adjusting voltage regulators and stuff, and he had convinced himself that he had seen voltage collapse. This is a topic that we studied at the university. Usually, it's due to, if I recall right, um, you just start pulling more and more reactive load for some reason, and it leads to increased voltage drop, and then next thing you know, the system collapses in terms of voltage. But really, what he was doing was, since he was changing the voltage, there's two types, well, there's three types of loads, but two primary types of load. There's constant kVA and resistive loads. When you lower the voltage on a constant kVA load, the current goes up. It's just because it tries to maintain the same type of kVA, and that would be like a motor. If you have low voltage, it draws more current in order to get the power that it's trying to take out to drive whatever mechanical system it's taking. Resistive load is basically the equation, Ohm's law, I equals ER. If you drop the voltage, the current has to come down. And so he wasn't really seeing voltage collapse. What he was doing was seeing an overall characteristic of the load we provided, and that since our voltage, since our current was going down, um, I think I think that's what it was. Yeah, that was like back in 2000. So, and this is 2021. So I think the current was going down a little bit, and as he brought down the voltage, so he wasn't really seeing collapse. What he was seeing is that um, a strong, very big component of our load was actually resistive type loads. So, um, but one of the things that was happening, it was a very hot summer, is our voltage regulator would start inhibiting. It wouldn't work anymore. And the question is, well, why? Did we have a fault with it? Did it have some bad contacts or what have you? And I'm not going to really get into that, but really what it amounted to was, and this ties back into the most important lesson of my career. Somebody had changed the setting. You don't correct it to be the setting you want to, um, but because of the most important lesson of my career, you try to find out why. And what became evident, especially on that particular day when the voltage regulator was inhibiting, I dug into the manuals and stuff, and somebody had actually set it to inhibit at a certain level. And what became apparent is it's out in the sun, and you got all the solar radiation beating down on it, and it's stainless steel, and so it's absorbing all this heat, which is raising the ambient inside. So to compensate for the increase in ambient due to the direct solar radiation is, well, you had to lower the setting so that it would still, be within its environmental constraints within the cabinet. But going on, at this time, Charlie had become the power manager, and it became a little less about doing engineering work and picking out things here and there. And one thing that he gave me to do reminded me a lot of my internship back in San Diego. I did a rotation a short rotation through the fire protection department. It taught us battery calculations and how to place sounders so that you got the required decibel level at each point within the area that the fire alarm was supposed to sound out. So he brought this, pamphlet to me, and looked a lot like that, kind of real basic voltage calculation, or excuse me, yeah, battery calculations. And that's all, might be all well and good for cadmium based batteries or whatever they're called, nickel cadmium. And it doesn't necessarily apply to lead acid batteries, which we used, to charge the DC circuits when the breaker had to trip when the power went out. Because those things, they sort of have cutoffs. It drains to a little bit. And, you got to take that into account when you're determining your capacity and how many batteries you need. So anyway, what we had the small telephone exchange. We had 3 main offices, and one of them, I guess, the power would go out, however it was being fed, and then they'd lose telephone control and stuff. And what we wanted to do was to put a UPS out there so that that wouldn't happen. And problem is, these guys go home Friday and they come back Monday, and so the batteries had to be sized to make sure that the phone didn't go out of power over the weekend. Which again sounded eerily like fire protection, but because you don't want your panels, don't want there to be a power outage and then your fire alarm system drain and not be functioning. You don't want people to take off for the weekend. So I go out there, I look at it, and it's like the 100 milliwatt load, but it's got to last, 72 hours or something like that. Whatever gets, from about mid shift Friday to mid shift Monday. So we had this, it wasn't really all that big. It was almost the size of a desktop computer to power this itty bitty electronic load. But it was necessary. They needed it done. They couldn't afford to have the phone system lose power and not get the phone calls that they needed over the weekend. So, that's really nothing to complain about. But there really got to be an emphasis. I had called the area office saying, hey, what's going on with this stuff? This is getting a little wacky, and I don't know nothing about the NEC. And, they said something about, well, you're a 3-foot clearance guy or something like that. Oh, no, man, this stuff is spread all throughout. And so it kind of got a little weird. I think whoever was pressuring the prior 2 managers is really flustering the hell out of Ben Charlie. It's just, I think if he felt life would just be easier if he could somehow get rid of me. If it wasn't a workable environment, I hated to let it go. I'd actually been talking to some of the people that were running what had come into place, a long time ago, were what they call cooperative utility electrical engineering institutions. Basically, they were co-ops where somebody had started a small utility company, and they had a lot of these out in Arizona. I guess it really wasn't worthwhile for a major electrical company to come through and feed all these remote, desolate areas. And so these things would spring up in certain areas. I was talking to some of the lead engineers over there, and he was telling me I should come, I could probably run one of these small places, and I really had considered it, but that's a whole separate issue, and may never get to that. But so I just decided, you know what, it isn't worth all the consternation and what have you. And somebody's just being flustered to the point where he's saying I can't work there anymore. And so I just went ahead and applied for Lant Div, and that's the end of the story. I don't really know what title to give this, so I'm just going to leave it as part 3. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It's kind of strange, troubling, but hey, what in the civil service was it? All right. Thank you for tuning in.